Recently, this phenomena has been there in the last 2-3 years. Next. Then there are some responses from the households, respondents, regarding factors affecting household income. So the most important factors, like 53% told that the decrease in the sale volume due to war and conflict has caused their income to decline. 15.5%, which is another important figure, is the loss of agricultural land due to war, and 19.9% said that there has been decline in purchasing power due to very high inflation. So these are some. Other include the prices of agricultural inputs and impact of bad weather on agriculture and similar reasons. So these are some of the major factors affecting the household incomes in the surveyed areas. Another aspect is the causes of death after 2005. So you see here injuries due to armed conflict. It's like the people who have died after 2005 in these areas, so it's the percentage distribution. Of course, there are normal reasons for people for the mortality, but the injuries due to armed conflict is 9%. And another important point in this figure is that these victims, most of them are below of age 40. So these are young people who are the victims of this conflict. Next. Yeah, another very important aspect of the war, earners were assessed through 20 specific health-related symptoms. And according to WHO, the same methodology was used. So population having score of 7 or more may be considered as having significant psychological distress and potential psychiatric cases. So very alarming situation appears here, very disturbing, that overall 67% of head of households and 53% of other adult male earners had a mental health score of more than 7. I mean, they, like more than half of the population of these male can be termed as a potential psychiatric cases are in a very psychological distress. So that, I think, is a very important finding of this report. Also, one of the important findings, of course, because this aspect of mental health is usually not very much discussed. Impact. Then open remarks about current conflicts. These are their own remarks, whatever they have to say. So 20%, 20.4%, they said that due to the war there has been loss of economic opportunities, and almost 15% of them, they said that this whole situation is an international conspiracy against Pakistan. It's the view of the communities. Then some of them, like 8%, said that there has been increase due to suicide attacks and also security. Taliban, 8% said that the current situation is due to Talibanization. 6.6% they said the youth joining Taliban due to unemployment. That's again related to the point I have earlier mentioned. And 5 point also, one important point is that 5% said there have been more incidents of the theft and dacoity, and the kidnapping has increased very much, because there is overall the law and order situation has worsened. That's why all the people who are already criminal groups, they have used this opportunity to increase their activities. And then government failure in providing safety and social services, 5% said that this is the case. So now may I request Dr. Taldapos to continue. Thank you.
You're all there in the report, and you can take the report on your way back home from the entrance. Now I need to look at the response of the civil society, having just mentioned, as I've just mentioned, about the stress and the trauma and the sufferings and the perceptions which are existing in the civil society. But before I share the findings, the main findings which emanated from those interactions, let me just tell you that these were the observations that were gathered by meeting representatives of the international non-governmental organizations, the local non-governmental organizations, journalists, working in and around Khyber Pakhtunkhwa area and FATA. I can the entire name of those who have been approached and accessed, and of course Mariam maybe is sitting over here, and I'm sure that the other representatives also are. So it's an observation which has been gathered by meeting the international and the local non-governmental organizations, but also the journalists, the media people. So looking at it before coming down to the main society, the civil society by and large believes that the root cause of terrorism lie with the very slow militarization of society initiated through support to Afghan Taliban, number one. Number two, they believe that it has increased because of the increasing religiosity. Here I'm talking about the perception which is existing at the civil society level because of the increasing religiosity. They also believe it increased because of the deprivation of the rights, the inequity, lack of education and employment, and poor governance at the national level. More importantly, they also believe that the state and the society, implying that the disconnect which exists between the state and the society needs to be narrowed down, they need to come together to develop a vision and implement the solution as equal partners. Looking at the main findings, there are several in the report, but I would be just mentioning these 5 of them, and I would like to share with you. The first main finding is that the main targets of violence and the militants have largely been the non-governmental organizations, journalists and educational institutions working in these areas. The consequence of that targeting has been that the non-governmental organization working in and around the conflict areas had to move out. Their work has drastically slowed down with the consequent effect on the pace of the social development. So this is yet another setback which is there because of the nature of the impact of the conflict which is there. Third point which is there is that women and the children have borne the greater impact, both as IDPs and those who have had the men killed or taken away. I think this finding necessitates that the gender differentials of the nature of the suffering needs to be looked into, which so far is ignored and neglected. So there is a clear, there has to be a clear gender differentials in the nature of the sufferings of the male and the youth. Fourth is that there is a division on the justification of the military operations and the US drone attacks. I mentioned earlier also when I was speaking to you, when I referred to the 2 phenomenons, because by and large, it is by a large segment of the society, the developments are viewed as a consequence of the crisis confronted by the foreign policy or a foreign policy crisis. So there exists a division between on the justifications amongst the people, on the justifications of the military operations and the US drone attacks. Fifth is that journalists and media have reported from the conflict zone, no doubt. Some have been attacked and threatened. We all have been hearing about it. Others have chosen to take sides by just citing the figures or quoting the number of the drone attacks of the civilians killed, while there is some that independent reporting has been difficult because of the way that the conflict was moving from region to region, and also because of the terrain, and also because of the emergence and the nexus which exists between the networks which started building up between various militant organizations. I think that can also be one of the contributing factors or the reasons for that. Now, what has been the responses of the civil society to the challenges? They have been, of course, adopting the security man, or they have been forced, they have been compelled because of the dangers confronted by them to adopt security measures by going for a smaller office. That implies that also came along by moving away from the conflict areas. And the first also implies that they have been forced to reduce the scale of the operations and at times close down their offices or reducing the staff members. So I think a major thing, because civil society, the growth of the civil society which has taken, the growth of the non-governmental organization, let me pin down on that. The growth of the non-governmental organization that has taken place in Pakistan during the last couple of decades, it sees a definite setbacks to them, particularly in these conflict areas. Second is developing activities or developing activities around peace building and harmony and conflict management themes within the communities, peace networks that have been set up. So 3 set of responses are there. Number 1 is that they have initiated certain activities around peace building, peace and harmony. And I think over the number of years, the male contributor is sitting over here, and they will check me if I'm wrong while answering to one of the questions. This may be one also of the causes because of the changing nature of the conflict and the intensity and the expansion of the conflict that has taken place in these areas. 2 is the conflict management themes within the communities and the peace networks like the peace assemblies, making of the Aman Tehreek and the Aman Ittihad, all indicative of the changing nature of the threats which are there and the way that the society has been responding to it. Training of the journalists on reporting in times of conflict has also been taking place, in spite of the fact the ones who view the reporting, particularly on the electronic media, would like to see some more improvement in the reporting ethics of these areas. Moving on, demand for an understanding of the nexus that exists between social development, peace, good governance, and democracy. I think this is the crux of it. We have talked about the interconnectivity. We have talked about the element of the interdependence. We have talked about the making of the threats and the fears which are there. And I think this nexus which has been there, which has taken the entire conflict from one level to the other area, I think it's an important response which has been taking place from the civil society. And last but not the least, enhanced focus on education and skill development for the younger people over there, and greater detail or what ought to be done would be placed before you when we are talking about the recommendations. But there is an arrow which you see right at the bottom, but a shared and comprehensive response is missing. So what is happening is that they're working in their own capacity, but an element of going for collaborative or the networks existing over there, or a comprehensive response to the various facets of the challenges and the threats faced by them is also somehow or the other missing. Next, now this is last because I'm sure we don't want to test your patience. So this is all about looking for solutions, and we call it in search of solutions. We can only make some recommendations, but with the nature of the complexities added to the whole problem, I think they need to be all taken forward to identify specific what needs to be done by which component of the society as well as the government. This, for example, the first one, that is a recommendation. But this recommendation is an outcome of the analysis of the budgetary priorities indicators, which as I had mentioned earlier, and seeing and noticing that there has been a sizable shift of the public resources from social sector to defense and public safety affairs. Therefore, there is because of the negative effect of social development, it should be minimized, and it needs to be ensured that the enhancement in security